Okay, well, welcome. We're in our study of other people's faith, and tonight we have a very special guest. I don't know what this is doing. Hold on one second.
Just click on think on
What's that? Okay, I don't know what happened. Um, Linda's joining us too. At any rate, I have a guest here today. This is Abdul Hadi Hamidi, and he came a few years ago from Afghanistan, and we got to know I call him Hadi, but his first name is actually Abdul. So I got to know Abdul and Ahmad through the refugee resettlement process and got to be good friends with them. And then just to help them get over the hump here, they've actually also been living with us. So they've been living with us for just about a year. But they're the greatest roommates ever because they both work full time jobs and we hardly ever see them anyway. So, but they are great. They've been a great addition to our household. So we're glad to be able to help them out in that way. But both Abdul and his brother Ahmad are observant Muslims. And so I thought as we talked a little bit about Islam today, we could have Abdul also share a little bit about his experience with both Islam in his own country and here and what's different in some of his practices and things like that. But the first thing I wanted to do, just as a general overview, was to review some of the material in the book, talk about that a little bit. And then I'm going to have Abdul share a little bit of his experiences with Islam. And I did like in the book how it talks about it as a way of life. And I think that's the one thing we've really noticed in living with you and Ahmad is that it's part of their life. It includes the way that they eat. It includes the way that they handle themselves. It includes the way they pray. It's just a way of living as much as it is a religion. Now, as a Lutheran pastor, I'm also hoping that's true for us, that our Christianity would be a way of life and not just something that we occasionally go to church for. But I think there's some ways in which, like being, perhaps an observant conservative Jew, it really is their life, their dietary habits, just their whole physical being is wrapped up also in their religion. So I want to take a little bit of look at Islam, but I do want to spend because we have Hadi here tonight, a little bit of time for him to offer his insights into the world of Islam as well. As you notice, Islam is a very quickly growing religion and it's very large. 20% they estimate of the world is Islam. And the only people that probably outnumber them right now is Christians, but that may not always be the case because they are definitely growing in a lot of countries. The word Islam, the way that I learned it, is simply it was traditionally mean to submit,
Yep.
right? To give in to Allah,
Yep.
to make Allah part of your life, right? Some people say that it means they have in the book that it means peace, but there's an Arabic word for peace, salam,
Yes.
right? So Islam really means to me to submit to the way of Allah in your life. It, of course, was founded by Muhammad, who lived around the 5th, 6th century between that time. And as I understand it, and because we share this ancestor in the faith, the angel Gabriel appeared to Muhammad and gave him visions. And then he recorded these visions, and that's what the Quran is, your holy book. Is that the way you understand it?
I think so.
Okay, that's what it says here.
Yeah.
So we'll believe the book. But the Quran is your holy book, right?
Yes. Right.
And sometimes it mentions this in the study as well, this people of the book, that Jews, Christians, and Muslims have this book that is sacred to them. And of course, ours is the Old and New Testament. And for the Jewish people, it's the Hebrew scriptures, our Old Testament. And of course, for the Islamic people, it's the Quran, which they can consider to be their sacred text. One thing that at least your mom had shared with me sometimes, they also consider the best. It's sort of like we study the New Testament in Greek and the Hebrew. I mean, in the Old Testament in Hebrew, because we still think that's the best source for understanding what's being said. And I think most Islamic people would say studying the Quran in Arabic is really important. That's the way you learned it, right?
That's correct.
So even though he's from Afghanistan, you spoke Uzbeki in Afghanistan and other languages.
Yes.
But Arabic is what the language of the Quran is.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Um, we have here in the book on page 68 these sort of 5 pillars of the Islamic faith, which include faith, prayer, and I'm going to have him talk about that because that's an important part of his life. Charity, giving to others. We have that, of course, in the Christian life as well. Fasting, Last year, this fasting is of course when Ramadan is, and it's based on the lunar calendar, so it moves around more so than our solar calendar. So I'll ask him this later, but we were with them during Ramadan last year, and it's better when it moves more toward the winter because the month is much shorter. If they're in the middle of the summer with Ramadan, you know, the sun can be up at 5:30 and not down till 9, and they have to fast the entire time. So it's easier during when it's in the winter months, right? Yes, it's much easier.
Yeah.
But fasting is part of that. And then, of course, to do the Hajj or the pilgrimage to Mecca is something that is expected of every Muslim that can do it. That's an important thing. They're not saying if you don't have the money or you're poor or you're an invalid that you have to make it. But it's an expectation that those who can would make a once in a lifetime pilgrimage to Mecca.
Right.
And of course, sometimes, this involves passports and, they were brought here by the United States, so they don't have their citizenship in the United States yet. They don't have a passport. So all those things matter as we sort this out. But basically, what the hope is for the Muslim people is that sometime in their lifetime, they would be able to make what they call the Hajj or the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Correct.
Okay. They have the beliefs of Muslims, where they believe in Allah. Again, it's a monotheistic religion. So again, I would say that we share this same thing. Sometimes we talk about our God a little bit differently, but I would say the Jews, Christians, and Islamic people all believe in one God. We believe this God meets us through what we call the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but we would still say there's one God. So Jesus is God, the Holy Spirit is God, the Creator is God. There's just one. Okay, so we share that among these three religions. They talk about angels, these divine messengers. Of course, and it's not lost on me that the angel Gabriel visited Mary to tell her about the wonderful birth of Christ, and the angel Gabriel visited Muhammad to give him wisdom about the future that he wrote down. They believe in the books of Allah, his messengers, the day of judgment, life after death, and also divine preordainment. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm not sure you understand that in English. It means things are set up the way they're supposed to be, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. One of the things that I've learned, and we also have a neighbor next door named Ahmad, who I've talked at length about a lot of these things over the back porch, but this idea that what we're doing here on earth matters. And it's sort of a test of us, of our time here, that the way we treat people here, the way we live our lives here matters for eternal life. And there's a strong belief within Islam that people who are evil in this world and treat people poorly will pay for that in the afterlife. They will be punished for that. And then people who treat people well, who are charitable to the poor, who keep their prayer life, who do those things that Allah has asked us to do, will be rewarded in the afterlife.
Right.
Okay. So again, that's part of this way of living. They share some of the same people in their book that if you ever pick up the Quran, of course, they have stories of Adam and Eve and creation, very similar to the way that we do. They see Jesus as a prophet, not as God, but they saw him as an important prophet of God. And there's even a story that Muhammad and Moses and Jesus meet at some point to have a conversation. So that's an important thing. I mean, Jesus was not just pushed to the side. They just don't see him as actual God. There's a little bit of history in the book about Islam, and I think Christianity and Jews and Islamic people share this thing that happened early on in the creation of Christianity. There was tremendous persecution. You remember that they were rounded up by the Romans, fed to the lions, and then out of that persecution eventually came a religion that was established. And of course, the Jews would say that would be their time of testing in Egypt and in the wilderness and other things that have tested them. And I think the Islamic people experienced great persecution as they began to develop a religion. They were ostracized, they were killed, and eventually, of course, they were received into a place, Mecca and Medina and other places where they could begin to flourish as a religion. So I think all three world religions would sort of share that. They talk a little bit about customs, and that's also what I'm going to have Hadi talk a little bit about marriage and how important that is. Of course, they are the age when if they were back home, they might already be married, but it's been a little bit different here in the United States with making that happen. They do more what we would describe as an arranged marriage. Um, that doesn't mean that their parents open a book and pick out a person and say, here you go. Usually what it means is within the community, and that's why it's difficult here, is their parents would know other families and other families that they trust and that they honor. And that family might have some daughters, and then Hadi's family would have Hadi, and they would talk, and then they would arrange the marriage that way. So it's not, I think sometimes when we think of arranged marriages in the United States, I think we think of it as more random, as if Hadi's dad would simply say, okay, I want you with that girl. That's not the way it is. It's really families that know each other and who want to honor each other by having a wonderful son marry their wonderful daughter. Is that a fair way of talking about it?
Yes.
Okay. But it's also difficult because in the United States, the dating scene is really not like that. And women can ask men out and men can ask women out and da 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 da. The truth of the matter, Hadi's not really allowed to be around women who are not married unless their father is there. Okay, so he's restricted to do that. There are probably a little bit of differences in the United States with work and things like that.
Right.
But pretty much men and women are separate. They're meant to be separate.
Yeah.
Unless you're married.
Right.
Okay. All right. So in the United States, because they're here, then it's a little harder. They have to contact the Muslim community here, and hopefully, and his dad does live here too, so there's some hope for them. So we're going to farm him out at some point, but not quite yet. We have work to do at our house. So at any rate, it is an important institution that marriage is meant to be for life, and they're meant. And I think both Hadi and Zubair think it's important that they would also marry a woman of faith and of their faith, and I think that's very important to both of you,
Yeah.
right? And so they want to try to do that because that's their way of life. And so they would like to find a marriage partner who is also a faithful Muslim, and that they would live their life then together.
Right.
Correct? Okay. I like some of these things that are on the bottom of page 69 that we always think sometimes differently, but these things Muslims do not do. And I just want to point some of these out. The second one in there, murder, attack another, or be an aggressor. There's many things that are going on that we read from the Muslim world that a lot of Islamic people don't like either. Like they don't think there should be war committed against other people. I think Hadi would agree, unless it's self-defense, you should not be murdering other people or have wars against them to kill them. That's against what Allah teaches, as we teach not to murder one another. Commit adultery or fornication, become intoxicated, the use of alcohol, wine, and drugs, that's strictly forbidden in the Muslim community. I'm not saying there aren't any Muslims who do it, but people who are practicing Muslims generally don't drink at all.
Right.
I mean, it would be a violation of their religion to do that. They're not to lie, steal, or covet, commit sodomy, or be homosexual. So at this point, there's not an acceptance of homosexuality in the Muslim community, correct?
Right.
They do not eat pork. And they normally, our guys keep halal also. So when we cook at home or bring something home, we always let them know if there's pork in it because they're really not allowed to eat it. Now, I think if they accidentally ate it or something, they're not going to die from it. But the idea is that we try to honor them by letting them know that. I have a little bit of a funny story to tell. We had Hadi and Zubair over our house for Thanksgiving this year, and my brother came over. And my brother got a new smoker. And I said, oh, well, then just bring us something. So we had the turkey and dressing and all that kind of stuff like we Americans would do. And my brother brought home and had worked on it all night, a smoked ham, which, of course, they can't eat. So we had a lot of smoked ham left over and sent some with him. He didn't do it, on purpose. He just didn't know. But it's some of those things sometimes when you know, then obviously you wouldn't do it. But they can't really eat that. They're not to cause fear or discomfort to their neighbor. They're supposed to be supportive of their neighbors, whether they're Christian or Muslim. I think we don't always hear that. And some of these are things that we have in our commandments too, about spying and slander and gossip, 8th commandment. Think about that. They have two main holidays. I call them the two Eids, really. Is that fair? They have here the Eid that follows Ramadan.
Yes.
And then a couple months later, there's another Eid called the Adha.
Adha, yes.
So those are their two major festivals. If you think about Christianity, we have Christmas and Easter are our two, but those are their two main festivals throughout the year. Okay. And then they have some basic things that the Prophet Muhammad said that they would follow. I like this one about not being superior, black or not black. That the discrimination is wrong, and that's part of what Allah talked to us about as well. You can see on the table of comparisons there some of the things we share, some of the things we don't share. Of course, we believe that Jesus Christ is the revelation of God. That's why we're Christians. They would say that Jesus was simply a prophet, and that Allah, who comes to them through the book of Quran, Muhammad, there's only one God. And so they would say, if we say Allah is God, that's fine, but they would say Jesus was not God. Okay, just so we're clear on that. All right. And of course, there's different communities led and rules by Quran. But I also want to say that like Christianity and like Judaism, there are many different forms of Islam. And some emphasize certain things and some don't. We have sort of progressive liberal Christianity, and we have very conservative Christianity, and everything in between. And it's the same with the Jewish community. It's the same with the Islamic community. So when you talk about what does a Islamic person believe, you sort of have to figure out, well, what kind of Muslim are they? Are they Sunni? Are they Shia? There's other varieties as well. Those are the two main ones. And that matters. Also, where they practice Islam matters. So Hadi would have certain traditions coming from Afghanistan that may be different from somebody who was born in Iran or Indonesia, etc. Just like Western Christianity, you do different things. But again, what the book is saying, what do they hold in common? Okay. Any just questions about that overview? But I also want to, because I have Hadi here tonight, I want to have some time talking with him. I keep calling him Hadi. His name is Abdul Hadi Hamidi. Like my name is John David Morris. In friendships, they tend to go by their middle name. So we know him as Hadi. But if you were to meet him on the street or do work with him, he would introduce himself as Abdul. So that's why I keep going between the two names, and I'm sorry about that. Right. But we're friends, so I normally call him Hadi. But his official name is, like, I would be John David if somebody wanted to say my official name, but I usually go by John. We go by the first name. They tend to go by the middle name for friendships and within the household and things like that. Right. So, okay. So, any questions about the overview that I've given you, or anything that popped up as I was talking? Barbara?
I've been really interested in this one because my son-in-law was raised Muslim, and he's, according to his mom, she thinks he's still practicing, but she lives in Tanzania, and so I'm sure there's a few differences between what your practice is and what his is, but
does he attend mosque?
no, he does not.
Does he pray the 5 prayers a day that you know of?
Not
Does
that
he have
I.
a prayer?
But
I mean,
he lives a very
yeah,
conservative life. He lives,
sure.
According to those rules.
Right. And if you think about it within our religions, there are people who would say that they're Christian, but they're not part of a church, or they're not part of a church community, but they've had some exposure to Christianity, so they keep some of those values. And I think that, and I know your son-in-law, so I know you're talking about, but I've met him before. But I think there are some people who would consider themselves by identity or by birth Islam, but they may not be practicing Islam. So, for instance, most practicing Islamic people, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the very least, would have a prayer mat and would pray regularly. Now obviously they work and they do other things, but they have prayer mats in their room. They go to mosque. Normally they're to pray 5 times a day. Right. And so this is a really cool thing that I didn't know in our modern day of technology. They actually have on their phone a locator for Mecca. So there's an app that you can get for your cell phone. So when they set their prayer mats down, they can put their phone down so they know that they're facing Mecca when they pray. I know that because one time I said, "What is this?" and then they told me. So, but they honor that, they keep that. And the other thing I think, and by the way, it doesn't mean that he's an awful person. He's not a practicing Muslim. He's just not a practicing Muslim. Just like I'm not going to hunt down people that are practicing Christians and say, "Well, you can't believe that if you're not practicing." There are many different ways to practice, and I don't want to say maybe there's some ways he prays in other ways. I don't know. But
Exactly.
normally, observant Muslims, if you're around them, you would notice that they pray. They also do something called ablutions. Do you know what that is? So, an observant Muslim has to make sure that they are clean before they pray and before they go to mosque. Do you want to say a word about that, or how do you?
Sure. So in Arabic we say wudu,
Okay.
and then it's ablution. Basically, what you have to do is when you use the restroom, you gotta wash and clean yourself, and then after that, washing your hands, your face, your mouth, your nose, and then your feet. Make sure you're clean, and then you're ready to go and pray. Without ablution, you can't pray. So
Okay.
you have to be also like clean when you sleep with your wife, and then you have to go take a shower, get ablution. Yes, you're clean then, right?
So you can see that hygiene is also a very important part of it. It's interesting to me that even in when I've been in Jerusalem, when the Muslims go up to pray on Friday, they literally it's like a whole line of water where
Yes.
they're washing and things
Yes.
before they go to the mosque. And I know that we were talking about Hinduism and Buddhism the other day, and I know that going to a Buddhist mosque, there's places to wash your hands. And of course, in the Christian tradition, we have a washing that brings you into the church through baptism. And they have those same purification rites, of course, for Judaism. So this idea of washing and being made clean before you pray has some vestige almost in every religion. And it certainly is true for observant Muslims as well. It's just important for them. So the way that I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're going to go pray to God, you need to have taken care of yourself so that when you pray, you can concentrate on that and you're holy and you're clean and all your efforts can be concentrated on that.
That's right. Yes, like when we go to mosque, we have to be clean. Like clothes are clean, your body, everything is clean, and then yes, you're ready to go and pray. But if you're not pray, if you're not clean, like if I'm not clean, the clothes are dirty, or if I didn't get ablution, so like even I don't have to touch Quran, the holy book, or I don't have to, go and pray. So,
and you shouldn't touch those things
correct.
if you're not clean.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. So
and even we have the hygiene part of it, but there's also a dietary part of it. And this is true for Jews too. When you eat pork, that's unclean. Okay, it's called haram, right?
correct.
So if it's halal in the Arabic tradition, halal means clean. It's a way of Jews would say kosher. All right, it's like halal, and they would say it's haram if it's dirty. So like pork would be haram.
So yes,
Killing another person would be haram.
Correct.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. So as you said before, we learned some of the things from John, and then we were not eating pork, and then he said, "Yes, that's correct. It used to be not clean pork,
Right.
but now they are informed things like that. But you're following the Quran, and Quran says don't eat pork. At the same time, yeah, there are two things we don't do, right? Don't drink,
And don't eat pork.
That's it.
All right.
So.
And unfortunately, Sharon and I do both those things. So we're the sinners in the house on those occasions. So, but I have to say that even though we do eat pork and we do drink, we also try to be respectful of them.
Oh yes.
I mean, we're not offering them to drink because we know they don't. I mean, it's not appropriate. And I don't know if they know this, but even if we would drink a glass and I set it on the counter for the dishwasher, I'm going to rinse that out because they shouldn't have to deal with my alcohol. Does that make sense? I mean, I think they probably would and wouldn't care, but it's just being respectful.
Right.
So if I'm, if we have a bottle of wine with a dinner or that night or whatever, I would rinse it out and not expect them to put it in recycling. Does that make sense? It's just a way of saying I'm respecting their tradition, that they don't really want to be around that stuff in a way that they're touching it and imbibing it and stuff. Okay. That was a long way around your question, Barbara, but I think we got to some other things too.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
Question about the imam and the leader. Is it like a leader of each community that attends a particular mosque? How because there are so, like you said, we go from most strict conservative Islam to not to more liberal. And so are the mosques divided like that, or and who are the leaders in the mosque, and how do they become the leader?
So if we say Imam, he's the one who knows more about Islam, who knows, who is like almost perfect reciting Quran, almost perfect to lead the pray in mosques.
Give the sermon.
Correct.
I mean, an imam's almost like a pastor and but also a teacher. That's an important part of who the imam is.
Yes.
Right. Are they paid by the mosque? Is that their job?
So if they're in need, yes, people, gather some money and then they pay. If there's an imam who is rich and then he's just falling, oh, I want to be imam, and then people don't have to pay.
Do they have to go to school for it, or do they just have to study the Quran?
They take classes to be imam.
Right. There are actually, I just know this, having some familiarity with it. There are some people who have memorized almost the entire Quran or the entire Quran, memorized it. It's this isn't it. It's like yay thick. You know what I mean? And there are some people who have memorized the entire Quran, if you can believe that or not.
Yes.
But
yes.
And that's part of their schooling. Aren't you supposed to try to memorize parts of it and things like that?
Yes, like the place where I was a kid, and then the village I was living, we were all going to learn Quran, and then there was specific like students, like volunteering from families. All right, I'm ready to memorize Quran, and then after a year or 2 years, it took like, let's say 15 or 17 years kid, and then he was like, or she was like fully memorized the Quran. Right. And then they practice all the time. Ramadan is also the month they practice Quran, and then they pray Ramadan night for long, I don't know, for 2 hours, 3 hours, and then they recite Quran. So I can say in 25 to 30 days in month of Ramadan, they finishes Quran reading from first
from start to finish
page to end of that. So yes, people memorize a lot. A lot of people memorize that, but I'm lazy.
He's not lazy, but he hasn't memorized the entire Quran. But you probably know pieces of it, like we would know pieces of the Bible. But I don't know too many who have memorized the entire Bible.
Yeah.
Now, also to Heidi's question, is there one imam per mosque, or can there be multiple?
There can be multiple.
Is the mosque here, the Noor Mosque, is there one imam or more than one?
So there is one, they call it imam, but while he's gone, there's another guy can pray and lead the prayer. Like if there's no one among like 20 people, if I just go and then I feel like, oh, I know more than these people, I can pray, I can lead the prayer better than them. So I just say, hey, I want to lead the prayer, or someone else with a good share, with more knowledge, and then they say, all right, I have experience of leading prayers. I want to, sure, why not? Okay. And then it's just can be more for sure. Yeah. Okay.
And normally, it's funny, the three different religions have different days. Normally, the Muslim people would pray on Friday. That's the day you would go to mosque officially. Yeah. But it's not required, and you can pray at home if you had to, or if you were traveling. And of course, Jewish people, the Sabbath is Saturday, but of course for the Jews it starts Friday night to Saturday night, and then for Christians, Sunday is the day of worship and things. But we've sort of split up the weekend between the three great faiths.
How do you know?
Go ahead.
Are there are you like a member of a mosque? Do you choose a mosque? How do you, is it like a congregation? Because I have some spirit experience now working in this community. And there's multiple, we call them tribes. I don't know if that's the right word, but they won't mix with each other.
Okay.
So each mosque usually is of a certain sect of Islam. Like it would be a Shia mosque or a
Yes.
Sunni mosque. There's even others.
Yeah.
And would you go between those usually, or you would stick with your tradition?
So as a Muslim, we are open to pray in any mosque. And
Okay.
it's open for any Muslim to go in any mosque and then they pray, he knows better.
Okay.
Like Shias, praying is a little different, slightly different, but still, you know, I have been in Shia's mosque and then prayed. I have Shia's friends, a lot of them, and then they come and pray the way they pray.
But you're Sunni, right?
Yes, correct. And then yes, we are open to go anywhere, any mosque to pray. So,
But in general, to answer your question, I think it's a little bit like Roman Catholicism, where you go to the parish in your area. So people tend to go to the mosque that's close to them in
Right.
general.
yes,
Now, that doesn't mean if he were over on the east side, they did live in Reynoldsburg and it was a Friday, he might go to a mosque over there. It's possible. But in general, because they go a lot, they're generally going to go to a mosque close to them. But the membership in the mosque is not like our congregation. Like anybody can come to our church, obviously, but then at some point you join the congregation. I don't think that's the way it is. If you don't join that mosque,
no,
right?
I
I mean, they come and they pray,
that's right,
and some people are more active in the mosque and on the
Correct.
leadership board and things.
correct,
And of course, they're also required to give money to the poor and to give money to the mosque and things as
Correct.
part of your, just like I mean, we're not required to, but you're encouraged to give. And in fact, during Ramadan, that's a time when they're specifically to give.
correct,
And my experience has also been in talking with your imam a little bit and others that when people in the Islamic community have reached a certain level and are wealthy, they are expected to give that money away.
Right.
I mean, they're not expected to give all their money away, but they're expected to make substantial gifts to the mosque and to poor people. Is that correct?
yeah, like that's also giving, you know, the poor people as one of the fifth in Islam. I think it's the
One of the
fourth fifth
pillars,
of that.
yes.
Yeah, the fourth fifth. Like one is saying there is no God but Allah. The second is praying 5 times a day. The third is
Fasting.
fasting. The fourth is, you know, giving to poor
Charity.
people, which is charity.
Right.
And then the five is pilgrimage. So yes, if I have money, I'm responsible to my God to help poor people that they need.
So you've
So
not experienced,
I think
guess,
Jean had a question. Jean had a question, and then Heidi.
okay,
Jean, did you or no? No.
I think as you talked, you answered it. But
Okay.
I had worked with you know, people of all faiths and so forth. And I had one young man who actually brought his prospective bride to the United States to see if she could live without parents, sisters, brothers, you know, how she liked being in the United States. And it did not work out because she was homesick. She wanted to be back
But
with her own
she,
congregation. When it comes to marriage, are you do you make overtures like that? Do you be sure that the two people are going to be happy where the husband happened to be, or prospective husband, you know, happened to be working at the time?
I'll say a few things here, and then let Hadi answer too. He would not be allowed to bring a prospective bride to the United States to see if she liked it. He would not be able to bring her separately unless they were married. That's
Really?
illegal. It's not. Yeah, you couldn't do that. I don't think. Could
Yeah,
you?
we have to get
Oh,
married.
no,
and
I
then-
mean, this
If they
was a
got
trip.
married, then
I
they
mean,
could-
it was a visa thing. This was not where you would, you know, be living here permanently. She came for like a 6-week visit.
with her
It was
father. Maybe with her
most
father.
likely with a male relative. I don't
That
know.
might be possible, right? But normally, like, and he has friends, normally the man would go to where she is. So they have a good
Mhm.
friend who recently went to Turkey and was engaged and got married.
Right.
But they're working
Mhm.
on visas and stuff because we all know that's a mess right now. And she's
Yeah.
in Turkey, he's here. But in general, I think it would be odd. I think what you're suggesting seems a little strange because unless she came with her father, but otherwise, I don't think that's possible for her to. I don't know.
So I have seen like young ladies, they are like not married and then they're here with their family.
But they're not observant Muslims, then, would you say?
They're
Or
not a perfect Muslim. Yes, I can say that.
well,
Yeah. And then people they choose their lifestyle and then they do whatever they want. Um,
but you would say they were not a practice. They're a disobedient Muslim if they're doing that.
I can say that. Yep.
But he's also saying there might be some people who do it. So, Heidi, I know you had a follow-up question. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I was just curious because I'm working in the schools that around Columbus, the Muslim schools, and some of them will not allow their children. So, for example, we do programming, and I'm just curious about this question because you said I think you said all Muslims will worship with each other, but they won't allow certain children to interface or connect with other children from a different sect. Have you experienced that?
I personally I have not. So from we are open to be friends with if he or
Okay.
she is Christian or if she is Muslim or in a different way. But there are some families I know from Afghan families here, trust me, like male are going out working, but their family just stay home and all the time. Maybe this their old culture back from Afghanistan, and then they don't let their wife to go out without their meal,
Right.
or they let their wife to dress up the way she want, or he might want her wife to cover all his body,
Like a burqa.
yeah.
Right.
And then
Right.
yes, correct. And things like that. Yes, there are families, and then they don't let their kids to be friends with.
Other, even Muslims, maybe.
Right. Yes.
So, but
Okay.
he's saying in
Just-
general that's not a policy of Islam. That's that particular family. And yes. So, I mean, I guess the answer is you get all different varieties, but
Yeah.
his version is, I mean, what he's saying is he wouldn't have trouble worshiping with any other Muslims, even if they were Shia or other, that he would feel fine worshiping with them. But there are some people who are strict. We also have a friend, Yasin.
Yes.
I mean, he's had me over to his house. I've met his wife, his children. They've been to our house. But if I knocked on their door this afternoon and his wife was alone in the house, she would not answer the door. She's not allowed to answer the door.
Right.
So if I, even though I'm a friend and I know her name and I know her children and I know her husband and they've been to our house, we've been to their house, she's not allowed to be with a male without her husband there. Does that make sense? It's
And
just
is
a
that
different.
because you to a certain sect of?
Well, he is. What is he? Is he Pashtun? No.
He is Shia.
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 Okay.
But still, there are Pashtun people or from our people. Like I speak Uzbeki, so people different. People are like they don't want their wife goes and talk to a male, or basically they don't like their wife to be seen by a male, things like that. Yeah.
So it can vary with the family and the traditions they brought to this country. But
Okay,
officially, Muslims can worship with other Muslims officially, but there may be some who don't want to do it or for conservative reasons don't. Does that help?
yes, yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Other questions? I was going to ask Hadi just say a little bit about these 5 times a day that you pray. Can you say a little bit about that and what you try to do and how do you keep it and what if you miss his time and all that kind of stuff? Or say a little bit about your
Yes.
prayer life and what you're trying to do.
Sure. So 5 times a day we pray. It is basically the first one is before sunrise. Um, it starts from a certain time, like nowadays it starts from 6:30.
So
to
the times are
7:30.
set by the clock, by
Yes.
the hour.
Yes, and then we have time till that, till sunrise. We pray the first, and then for the second, which is noon, the time starts usually 12 to 3 p.m. So we have that range of time.
So they have
pray
a
the
window
noon.
of time in which they can pray the second one.
Yes, and then the third one is between 3 p.m. to 5:30. The fourth one is between 5:30 to 6:30 or 7. And then the other one, the last one is the longest one, which starts from 6:30 or 7 p.m. to almost morning time, let's say 5 a.m., something like that. That's the longest one. And then each time we pray, it doesn't take more than 15 minutes. The shortest one I can say the third one, which takes about 3 to 4 minutes to pray. Also morning time, the first one, it takes about 5 or 6 minutes. So yes, we every time we pray, we go get ablution and then pray and then go back to work or your life. We have to pray, and then if we miss uh, while driving somewhere or while you don't have a clean clothes at that time to change your clothes or in a place that you can there's no like chance to go and pray, so yes, you have that excuse and then you can go pray that later. It could be after um, prayer of number 5, maybe after 7 p.m., 6 p.m., something like that. But we have to try to pray. Or if you're sick, you're like very sick, you can't move that much really. Yes,
You don't have to pray then.
yes, you have that excuse. You don't have to pray. So, yep.
But you can, I guess the one thing, if you just think about this from a Christian perspective, think if every Christian prayed 5 times a day for 15 minutes, right? I'm not sure every Christian did. Maybe people do, but I think most don't. But think about how that sets a rhythm for your life. That you're making sure that throughout your days, and I know a lot of us pray at meals, maybe we pray at bedtime or maybe early in the morning, but what I see in them is it is a way of life. It creates a rhythm and a pattern, and also just it reminds you of why you're here and what the purpose of your life is, connects you to God. And I think Christians can learn a lot from that. Now, I'm not saying we're going to mandate get your prayer rugs out and pray 5 times a day, or not do it the same way. But I think that we can learn from the rhythm of that prayer life from the Muslim community. And of course, our monastic communities have done this. They pray 8 times a day with the different prayer offices. But that idea that you're submitting Islam, you're submitting to God as part of your life. You can see how that sets a tone for your life. And then on top of that, the personal hygiene that's required, the what you're eating, you're paying attention to what you're eating to make sure that you're eating things that are appropriate. All of that, I think, sort of sets a tone for their life.
Yes.
And they are both, now maybe it's your age too, but you guys spend a fair amount of time at the gym.
Yes.
Keeping your body healthy
Oh, yes.
is also important as part of it. You see how that's all part of a way of life that is Islamic. But I would also say that just knowing them, they are also, while they keep their traditions, they're open to hearing what we do and having conversation with us. And, they're supportive. They're not Christian, but they're not anti what we're doing. Does that make sense? They're still open to, our faith life and things that are important to us. They're not judging us because we're not like them. And I'm not judging them because they're not like us. I'm trying to understand and learn, what is it that, how is God is so central in their lives. I just always think there's some things Lutherans could learn about that, is what I think, just from observing them. So.
Yes, and then I forgot to mention. Actually, the praying is 5 times a day. It's basically talking to God. And then we stand, we sit, we reciting from Quran. We are reading things from Quran, which basically Muhammad, peace be upon him, talked to Allah. And then, every time we read that, it means yes, we are talking to God. Some people, even me, sometimes I really focus on what I am reading. So, it feels like, yes, I'm talking to God. God is right here now to me on top of my head. Sometimes like I'm just praying, but I'm thinking about work. What happened there? It's just
like everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes you're more focused than other times, sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sitting in church wondering what I'm going to get at the grocery this afternoon, and I should be listening to the sermon. Right. I mean, I think we've all been there. Right. Absolutely.
Especially if you're preaching it.
Exactly. Any other questions or curiosities, or Jean?
Yeah. Let's take an example of a physician who say is a surgeon and he's stuck in the OR, he or she get an automatic dispensation, for want of a better word, for skipping that and making it up later?
Correct. Yes. If
Yeah.
there's a patient who does need, cure. So I, as a doctor, as a surgeon, I have to care about my patient, because I can't, if I just leave to go pray, yes, I prayed, but he lost. I mean, he's dead. So I should have to stay. I should take care of her. And then I can go pray later. I can say, all right, I saved one of yours. Hey, I can talk to my God. Hey, God, I saved one of your slave, and then he's alive or she's alive now. I hope you forgive me. And then I just prayed. I hope you accept my prayer. So yes.
By the way, he's using slave there. We use the word follower, by the way, a follower of Islam. They often call them slaves.
Yeah.
But it's not slaves like we're all. Okay, you everybody with me on that? Okay. So it also, Gene, during Ramadan, if you have a profession where you need to eat, like if you were a surgeon, you are exempt from that.
Yes.
And also, this last Ramadan, there was a couple days where Hadi got a really bad cold or virus or something. So I mean, there was a couple days he didn't fast because his body needed to recover from that, and then he went back to fasting. So they're aware that, and like let's say a woman who was pregnant,
yes,
or you had let's say you had diabetes, where you cannot fast the whole day or your body goes into insulin reaction. Those are exempt. I mean, Muhammad was clear about that actually in the Quran, that if there's a reason someone can't for life reasons, they're exempt from that. It's not a hard fast rule. Children are also exempt from fasting, right? I mean, for the most part. I mean, at some point a child will say, I want to fast.
Yes.
But generally, because they're growing and stuff, they're exempt from fasting. What time do they usually start? I mean,
it's different and depends on family. Some families are right, you have to fast, but some families are, if you can't, you fast. If you can't, you don't have. Like some kids, because the whole family is fasting, some kids like, oh, I want to fast too, and then he or she starts fasting, and then at the middle of the day, he's like, oh, super hungry, I'm like, just go eating.
Right.
Or some kids, all right, I'm okay till, sunset, and then, yes, he or she is fasting. So it really depends.
Yes. And one more question. Are
Sure.
there some occupations that women are not allowed to do, such as surgeons or internists, or what?
Are there any work? Are there any jobs that women are specifically excluded from? in Islam?
So I don't think so. We have Muslims surgeon, I don't think there's something like that. I've not heard that before.
Who is the head of the household in Islam?
Men,
The men.
the men.
Does the woman have any say in what goes on at all, or does the man have the final word?
So like it's not something that men doesn't listen to women, I mean, in Islam, men have to they has to, listen to their women. They're like,
Or they might live
Yeah,
an unhappy life, right?
you're like super respectful, women, and then we have to respect women. We have to listen. Yes, if I say something to my wife, and then at the same time my wife has another opinion, yes, compare both, and then say, hey, if you do this, this is in a better way. This is what will be the outcome. It will be good. Yes, agreed, and then go.
So the men, even though they have the final say, are supposed to take the advice and
Take the
encourage
women and,
their
yeah.
wife. They're supposed to understand what their wife wants too, not just say we're doing this, because I mean, Hadi's quite aware that first of all, the women, my wife runs our house, let's just say it. But if a man would just do that, then his wife might not want to go along with him or be stubborn or unhappy. You know, just like in any relationship. So it's official, but I think there's a lot more conversation these days that happen between men and women.
Yes.
So that everybody's happy and,
Yes.
and thinking about it.
Yes. Right.
I had a question.
Sure.
Um,
Is that Darcy? I can't see.
It is,
Yeah, hi,
yes.
Darcy. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So,
ahead.
on the 5 times a day for prayer, it's you're reading text from the Quran. Yes? Is
I
that
think they're reciting text from the Quran.
Yes.
So like we would do the Lord's Prayer from memory or the Creed, other things that we do from memory, they're reciting portions of the Quran. I don't think you're actually reading for the Quran during prayers, are you? I mean, at the mosque you would, but you're usually reciting those prayers,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
So it's memorized.
So like
And-
in month of Ramadan, so in some big mosques, and then the imam reads from the Quran, since it's a lot of people, maybe it's Ramadan, he can like keep everything in his memory, so he keeps open the Quran and then he prays, which is fine, which is basically reciting Quran. So
But their prayer life, he doesn't have a Quran out when he's praying. He's doing it by recitation.
yes.
Does that make sense?
yes, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Follow up to that, Darcy? I thought I might have cut you off there. I didn't mean to.
No, no, you're fine. That explained it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions tonight? Barbara?
Is the Quran written in English at all?
It's been translated into English. Yes, you can get an English version. But
Okay,
originally was given to
Arabic.
Muhammad. The people who were with him wrote it down as he was saying it. They wrote it down in Arabic.
Right.
So, just so you know, as we wrap up tonight, we're going to get together tomorrow night, and I mean a week from now. And what I'm going to do is I want to take some smaller portions of the Quran and look at them, and also compare them with some of the biblical things that we have. So I'm going to have that on an upboard so we can see it and talk about it, and just do some of that comparisons and things. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, you shoot me one of those. He lives upstairs, so I can always run up there and wake him up at 4 a.m. and ask him if he needs it. So we can see. So we want to thank Abdul Hadi for being with us tonight, and hopefully you've learned some things. And again, next week we're going to sort of look at the Quran and the Bible and see some ways in which they're similar, some ways in which they're different, but just have some comparison of that. All right. All right, everybody have a nice week. Stay well. And we'll see you next week or before.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Okay, thank you.